Welcome, everybody.
Morning.
Carolina, do you want to kick us off?
Yep. I think it's just letting people are joining in. Yeah, flowing in. We have 30 people, 32. Just
Hey, as people are joining, maybe type in where you're joining from.
Yeah,
Where
I'd love that.
are you joining from, so we can just get a sense of that. Your name, what organization you're from. That'd be fun.
What's the weather like today where you are? I always like to know that.
How cold is it? Or
Yeah.
A lot
How
of
warm?
we're in Toronto this morning, a lot of us, so it's a little cold.
Yeah.
okay. I see we have still a lot of people coming. Welcome everyone joining us right now.
Oh, it sounds like chat's disabled, Carolina.
Is it?
Thanks, Phil and Mike. Yep.
Chat with everyone. How about that?
See if that works now, folks.
It should be good now. Yay! Hello, everyone.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Oh, the sound is on now. That's good.
Yay, Phil. Hi, Mike.
I see a lot of familiar names. That's exciting.
Oh, Ireland. What time is it? Well, I guess it's in the afternoon. Oh, Buffalo. Great, another Buffalo friend.
Okay, why don't we get going? What do you say?
Let's kick us off. We have a really packed day today of activities, but of topics that we'll go through, and very excited to dive in. So thank you everyone for joining us to Fundraise Forward. My name is Carolina Vendania. I'm the director of the Media and Data Department here at ST. I manage the list brokerage as well. I also work with the STella team on digital acquisition campaigns, and I'll kick it off to Philip now to introduce us and take us out through the day.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I will be honest, I have mixed emotions this morning. I'm excited about our webinar, but I woke up to the news of the crash in DC. And so I just want to take a moment and say that those folks are on our thoughts, the families and the friends of all the people who perished, unfortunately, last night in an air crash with a helicopter. So I just want to make note of that. But let's kind of make some space for that and keep moving forward with the Fundraise Forward. This idea kind of came to us at the end of last year because we're seeing so many interesting results from last year in digital fundraising. And we thought, what's the best way to share what we're seeing? What's going on? What are the trends? And we thought, well, let's just organize something early in the year, January 30th. Let's get out there and let's just start talking about what we saw last year and what we're doing to prepare for this upcoming year from a digital fundraising perspective. Now, we're going to touch on direct mail. The agency that we work out of, Stella, is the digital division of ST. ST's been a direct mail fundraising agency for 40 years. And so we have a lot of clients where most of their direct response money comes from mail, not from digital. We have some clients that are the opposite. It's mostly digital and a little mail, and it's everybody in between. So our goal this morning is to kind of share with you what we're seeing and hopefully create a conversation with you about what you're seeing too. My name's Philip King. I'm the managing director of Stella. I'm an American who lives in Asheville, North Carolina. I spent a lot of time in Toronto. I know a lot of these Toronto folks who you'll meet soon. And my real passion is trying to use data. I love Google Analytics data. You'll hear a lot about this. I love Fundraise Up data. Do you know what I mean? It's like we've got so many tools now to see where the money's coming from. How do we most efficiently use our limited time and limited budget to raise the most donations that we can? So that's kind of my personal interest. And with that, I think I will hand it over to Jessica.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jess Tiberio. I am the Senior Director of Digital Fundraising Strategy at Stella. And I grew up in the direct response industry, and it has been my absolute joy to take my passion around fundraising and helping our clients raise more money and really focus that on digital first type strategy. And that's what we do with our Stella clients. And I'm so thrilled to have you all here today with us to talk about kind of the future and what we're seeing in the space when it comes to trends in technology, and then in particular for fundraising. And can't wait to talk to my friend Gray from Dataro later today, and some of our friends, Sal from Fundraise Up, to understand how can we leverage technology specifically in fundraising to allow us to respond to our donors where they are and provide a better, more targeted experience for them. So can't wait for that. I live in Virginia Beach. But I am here in Toronto and so excited to be with my colleagues and all of you today. With that, I will pass it over to Brian.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's great to be here. It's great to see all of you. I see some familiar names in the participants list, current clients and former clients, and some people we haven't met yet, but I'm looking forward to that. And I'm Executive Vice President and Chief Creative Officer at Stephen Thomas. So I oversee all of the creative that goes out of the agency for all of our clients. I've been in the nonprofit sector for 16 years at ST, and prior to that, spent about 20 in the commercial world, working at commercial agencies on big brands you've all heard of. And now I bring that passion to nonprofit clients here, and we're going to talk about how we've been grappling as an agency with AI and integration, and how we bring it to life in fundraising channels. So we're really excited to get into that. We're going to see some real work and talk about some real ideas here. So I can't wait to get started. But first, over to you, Gray.
Awesome. Great to be here. Great to see everyone. My name's Gray, like the color, and I drove into Toronto from Ithaca, New York yesterday. So go Bills, Richard. I'm stoked to be here. It's my first time in Toronto, and y'all will hear a bit more about me later, but I got my start in fundraising many moons ago as a canvasser, face-to-face fundraiser in New York City. So if you ever dodged a gangly redhead trying to give you a high five, that was probably me. So that's a bit about me. I don't know who am I passing it over to, Jess?
I think you can pass it back to me, Gray.
Back to you, Philip.
Unless there's any other comments. I mean, we've got a packed up day. We've got about 4 hours of content. We don't expect you all to stay for all 4 hours. Hey, you're welcome to. And then maybe for the people who stay all 4 hours, there's some special prize that we'll figure out. But I'll show you. Let me start sharing my screen here, and let's kind of get into the content. Let me share, make sure I've got my sound. We got this going on. Does everything look good, Jess, from your screen?
Yeah, it looks great.
Everything's good. Okay. Fundraising megatrends. Let's just clarify what you're seeing. Stella. So just for a little grounding, Stella is our digital agency. That's the one I manage. And really what our whole purpose is to accelerate digital fundraising. I like to say it's like hiring a personal trainer when you go to the gym. You can go to the gym by yourself. You don't need a personal trainer. But if you hire a personal trainer, they'll sit down there and they'll yell at you when you're doing your push-ups, and you're going to get fitter faster. That's kind of our role at Stella. We meet all sorts of very, very talented teams. And our goal at Stella is just to accelerate whatever it is they're trying to do. So that's Stella. ST, you'll hear us talk about ST. ST is the kind of parent agency that we sit in. That stands for Stephen Thomas. Steve, if there were a Mount Rushmore in Canada of the direct response fundraising kind of grandparent, Steve would be on there. He kind of started direct mail fundraising in Canada about 40 years ago. So we wanted to talk about fundraising megatrends. We've already done some intros, so you kind of get to know us a little bit. Let me give you a sense of what to expect. Now we're doing welcome and context pretty quick here. I'm going to dive into megatrends. What am I seeing across all of our clients, across the industry, across technology that affect digital fundraising? At 11, Jess is going to bring in Fundraise Up. We've got Sal, and I don't know if Larry's going to present, but both of them are here, and we'll kind of dive deep into one of our favorite platforms these days. We'll then hand it back over to Gray. You've met Gray. Another one of our favorite platforms is Dataro. I'm going to let him talk about that. At noon, if you're kind of keeping track, maybe take a picture of this slide so you can kind of time your breaks and your lunch and whatever. At noon, I'm going to conclude Megatrends, that first part. 12:30, we're going to dive a little bit deeper. We're going to kind of bring on some of our technology team. They're very excited about Blackbaud, Shopify, TeamRaiser, you know, these changes being pushed through Blackbaud inside of some of the online donation systems, as well as peer-to-peer. Okay, so that's kind of where you want to mark your time. These are Eastern times, 12:30. At 1:30 is conclusion and questions. And then we're going to finish this at 2. Okay, so that's 4 hours of content. If you have questions and you can't wait till 1:30, no problem. Send it to us in the Q&A, send it to us in the chat. We do want this to be as interactive as possible. We do want to kind of keep moving through the content. So I don't want to linger too long on any one question, but I would welcome questions as we get going. Sound okay? Let's just dive right in, okay? In honor of my location, I'm sitting here in Toronto right now. Does anyone know, maybe put it in the chat if you know who this is? Who's this person who coined the phrase, the medium is the message? And I don't know if somebody who's not on mute, Jess, can you read out people in the chat? I can't see the chat when I'm presenting necessarily.
Marshall McLuhan.
Marcia
That's
McLuhan.
someone.
Somebody got it right. I don't know who that was. Marcia
Margaret
McLuhan.
Mild.
Who? Margaret?
Margaret Mild got it right.
Margaret, way to go. Okay. I graduated college with a history degree, and so I love starting with history. Marshall was born, I think 1911, don't quote me, but early in the 1900s in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And he died in 1980 in Toronto. So that kind of gives you his lifespan. He's a Canadian philosopher. So it's funny, when he passed away, that's kind of right when Steve was starting ST as a direct mail fundraising agency. People mostly remember Marshall McLuhan for his phrase, the medium is the message. And I thought it would be an appropriate setting as we get into digital fundraising to say, well, what was he talking about? And how does it impact the work that we're doing today? The medium is the message basically says that it's more important the medium through which the message is delivered than the message itself. You know, Marshall was talking a lot about, the oral societies. There was a time before we had anything written down where people communicated through just voice, verbal. They were using different parts of their brain to remember things. Then we started having writing, which used a different part of our brain to look at the text on the page. Then we had, the printing press. Then, that kind of kept going. Then we got radio. Then we got TV. And then Marshall even predicted what he called the global village. And a lot of people think he predicted the internet. Obviously now we're dealing with the internet and what that means to us. But just keep this in mind as we start this morning. Is the medium the message? Is that the most important part of how we start to communicate and tell our stories? Let me start with the first mega trend, given that setup with Marshall McLuhan. Changing media. So if the medium is the message, how does changes in media play a role for us? And what do we need to be paying attention to? Does anybody know what this was? And then shout it out, Carolina or Jess or anybody who's off mute, if anybody gets this right. What am I showing here on the screen so early in the morning on a Thursday? Does anybody know the significance of this picture or this image?
Brian Schmidt says, first broadcast presidential debate. Presidential debate.
Brian
First
Schmidt.
televised
Where's
presidential
Brian
debate.
Schmidt from? Brian got it right. Okay, so in the US, I'm an American. I pay a lot of attention to US politics. I'm not going to get into US politics today, but this was the first time that the presidential debate in the US was televised. There was this new thing called television. Up to now, it had been on the radio, okay? And so the medium is the message. The people who, this was Kennedy versus Nixon, okay? The people who watched the debate on television thought that Kennedy won. The people who listened to the debate on the radio thought Nixon won. It depended on the medium they were using to consume the information. Same content, different channels, different outcome, okay? So I always think that's kind of an interesting little place to start to say, well, that's interesting. For those of you who were paying some attention, we just had a big election in the US, and the medium continues to change. Some of the candidates used what I would call traditional legacy media as their primary channel for communication. Some of the folks used what I call new media. They really dove into the podcast. They dove into YouTube. They used new channels. Now, I'm not going to say this is why one won and one didn't, but we clearly saw that the audience was changing the way, the audience being the American voting population, started changing the way they would get their information. Okay, so I just want to kind of set this up for us as we get into the fundraising discussion. I would like to kind of bring up this idea of authenticity and trust. Why did some people move from watching CNN to listening to Joe Rogan? Why would they do that? Why would some people stop reading the New York Times and read the Epoch Times? Why would they do these things? Like, is it just because they're bored with money? No, it's because they lose trust in a source of information, and they're seeking trust, okay? All of us, we all want to know who we can trust. Where should I read about what's going on? Who will I listen to? So I'm going to set this up. Brian is going to kind of drive this point home as we kind of get into AI. We're going to start talking about AI and the role of AI in online fundraising these days. But let me just set it up with the kind of idea. Keep in mind, authenticity and trust becomes very important for us, particularly as fundraisers. Many of you may look at this report. It's the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's a global report published every year. It's kind of interesting because it takes a look at globally, where are people getting their information and how are individuals changing? What is the change in the way that they trust different brands, the way they trust different institutions? And I think it's important for us to keep in mind data like this. In this data, so I'm now kind of using some of this Edelman data. The question is, this is where I get most of my information about new technologies and innovation. I'm doing my own research. So where are people going? They're going to online searching. First, social media. Here's poor old national media. They used to win all of these. You know, back in the day, we used to always turn to NPR, CBC, New York Times, friends and family, local media. But look at this online search role, okay? Let me just tease this piece apart a little bit as I think about, well, okay, people are searching for answers to questions. They're searching for places they can trust. What about your data? So now I'm going to flip for a second into Google Analytics 4 data. So all of you have probably Google Analytics running, watching your websites and your mobile apps if you have them. And there are many analytics systems we could use. I particularly like Google Analytics 4 because it's got a certain view of data that I like, and everyone can use it and it doesn't cost anything. What the cost is, there's a little bit of a learning curve, and you kind of have to spend a little time in it and not get too seduced. You could spend all your day inside of Google Analytics 4. The key thing is to dive in, get your information, dive out. So what I'm showing you is a client and their view of what's called primary channel group traffic. And it's organizing, Google's organizing the data based on sessions. Okay, so it's looking at sessions. So here's a little takeaway so far this morning. Ask someone in your team to look at your Google Analytics data. And if they say, oh my gosh, we're not running Google Analytics, just start running Google Analytics right now, you know, as soon as you can. You want to make sure that you're creating the recording so a year from now you can look back and see your Google Analytics data. The other encouragement I would give to the fundraisers in the audience is don't outsource this to the IT team. I love the IT team, but I want the fundraisers to know the data inside of your own Google Analytics data. So, okay, long story short, why am I showing you this? Here's a very large client. You know, they've got a lot of data. They have 26, 27 million sessions. 23 million of them came from organic searches, okay? So most of the traffic on their website is coming from just the point that Edelman Trust report was showing us, which is people are searching. Now, most of this organic search is Google. There's no question. Bing is coming up. Yahoo's coming up. Brave is coming up. We're getting a lot of other searches. And as you probably know, people are starting to search in ChatGPT, and we'll get back to that later. But for now, let's just keep it kind of easy. Google is providing most of this organic search traffic. The second big way that they're getting traffic is direct traffic to their website. They're typing in their domain. Paid social, we're spending money on social media ads. Paid search, we're spending money on search ads, and on down it goes. My point being, for most of you, your data is going to look exactly like this. It won't have the same size, but the ratios will be similar. My guess is most of your traffic arrives organically through searching. Okay, so just keep that in mind also. We'll come back to it. Edelman Trust Report, again, is looking at an axis here. Ethical at the top, unethical at the bottom, less competent and competent. And they are just doing these overall plots. Now, for all of us, I want to draw your attention to this NGO box right here. Kind of most ethical out of business, media, and government. Poor government, it's incompetent and unethical, according to the global survey. Business is a little less ethical than the NGOs, but more competent. NGOs have a lot of ethical score, not as competent as business, and media is quickly chasing government down the slide here, okay? So we need to be very careful as nonprofits communicating with our audiences that we don't do anything to suggest a lack of ethics in what we're doing, because we're not selling a nice pair of shoes, you know, with these brands. You know, I get a nice Lululemon top. I'm pretty happy, right? With a nonprofit, I'm making a donation. I'm not really getting anything in return other than the reason I made that donation. So again, we're kind of a special group when we think about NGOs. And then as we think about NGOs moving online to fundraise, we have to be very aware of our role in society as we compare ourselves to the businesses, to the media organizations, and to our governments. Okay. And then Carolina, Jess, anyone who can speak to me at this point, if there's some key questions coming through, feed them my way. But if not, I'm going to keep moving forward.
You can keep moving.
Megatrend. Okay. Shifting attention means shifting time. Why am I curious about where people are spending their time? Because I'm trying to catch their attention and I'm trying to get them to give to the cause I'm working for. So it's very important for me to understand, where are they spending time? Okay, audience question. Who is this? And then somebody, Carolina, shout out if they get it, if people start guessing. Who is it?
Mr. Beast. Yes,
Mhm.
people are guessing.
Who got Mr. Beast first?
First, Brian Schmidt.
Woo, Brian's on fire. Okay. Mr. Beast. Now, I live in North Carolina. Jimmy Donaldson grew up in North Carolina, just some dude in high school who was fascinated by YouTube. And he was so curious about why some people clicked this video versus that video. He was a natural born direct response fundraiser. I don't think he'd call himself this, but he was real interested in A/B testing changes to the thumbnail image that would get clicks on A versus B on YouTube. Well, because of his passion, he now is one of the largest presence on YouTube. He's got 333 million subscribers when I made this slide, which was a couple of weeks ago. He's got more than that now. But he's a real person. And I'm gonna mention that he's a real person because we're gonna come back to this in a second. He actually exists. Do you know what I mean? If you look at his ranking, I'm using kind of a little Wikipedia data here. Mr. Beast is way up here, number 333. You got T-Series, Coco Melon, Nursery Rhymes, SET India. We're starting to see a lot of Indian brands now kind of flood into the YouTube rankings. You'll see this on IMDb. If anybody uses IMDb to figure out movies now, a lot of Indians are kind of searching inside of the IMDb database. So you're going to get a lot of Bollywood coming up in your searches now. On down you get. For our Canadian friends, the first Canadian to kind of make the rankings is good old Justin Bieber at 22. Okay, but look at the size of Mr. Beast. I would just say, boy, that's really interesting. Okay, who knows who this is? Any answers? Carolina, anybody guessing?
Not yet.
Oh, a tougher one.
Yes,
Who said it? Anybody get it?
Kabi. Azar and Wanda said Kabi lame.
Kabi Lame. Okay.
Lame.
Okay. Let's just kind of say, okay, who is this? Who is this? Kabi Lame. He's got
People are saying they recognize him. So
they see his face. They know his face, right? He's got 163 million followers on TikTok. He's got 2.5 billion with a B likes. Okay. So just keep in mind the size of 2.5 billion, right? When you think of the global population. He's also a real live person. He actually exists. He was born and has, you know, a heartbeat and everything. So why am I just putting these folks on the screen? Well, it's because they're able to capture a lot of attention. Whatever they're doing is capturing a lot of attention. Kabi Lame grew up in Senegal. And when he got so popular, he had kind of dual citizen. One of his parents was Italian, and the Italians begged and begged and begged for him to get his Italian citizenship just so they could say that Kabi is also Italian, and now he is dual citizen, Senegalese and Italian. Here's Charlie D'Amelio. Here's Mr. Beast, number 3 on TikTok as well as on YouTube. Bella Porch, on down we get. Okay. Why am I showing this? It's where the audience is paying attention. Now, many of you have told me that you love that your online fundraising is growing. We see the revenues going up, but we're worried about acquisition, okay? We need fresh blood in our donor base. We need to get younger people into our donor base. We need to find new relationships, okay? You've all said the same thing. And so what I'm going to say in response is, well, okay, where are they spending their time when they are not sitting on our website? Where are they spending their time? This is a Canadian stat, 2023. I couldn't get any more recent. I'll try to update it, but it's kind of generally making the point I'm trying to make here. The site says average time spent per month in hours and minutes. TikTok is at 38 hours and 47 minutes. Okay. Just think about that for a second. YouTube, 19 hours, Facebook, 16 hours, Snapchat, 12. I won't keep reading them, but I mean, that's a lot of time that Canadians are spending looking at TikTok and liking Kabia LeMay's videos. That's a lot of time. We are competing for attention. As we digitally market and fundraise, we are competing for precious attention. We're trying to get the attention of someone so that they will click our link, read our content, and make a donation to us. So we just got to be aware of what we're competing with. Let me show an American stat for our American friends on the line. Average time spent on social networks among US adults per day. Again, TikTok, YouTube, X, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, okay? This is kind of above the 50-minute mark, and this is per day, okay? And it's adults per day. So it's almost an hour per day on TikTok. It's slightly less on YouTube, and down you get. Similar story to the Canadian data. Now, you're all going to say, oh, whoa, it's just the kids. You know, this is just the kids on TikTok. Well, no, it's not. Okay, this is the US TikTok users by age. We're seeing this right now in this big debate of, does TikTok sell? Do they not sell? Do we turn it off? Do we keep it on? But look at the age breakdown. 18 to 24s, 25 to 34s is the single largest slice of the pie. But look how big the slice is of 55 plus, more than 10% of the audience, almost 15% of the audience. So I would suggest to you that this demographic age breakdown is very much in our sights for acquisition activities. We would love many of these people by age to participate in our not-for-profit activities. So I'm not saying rush out and start spending money on TikTok ads, but I am saying let's be aware that our audience is spending a lot of time on applications such as TikTok.
Philip, in the chat, Rebecca says YouTube Shorts versus YouTube. Would love to know that breakdown. A lot of people consume TikTok, Instagram, Reels, etc. via YouTube Shorts.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a little pause on the YouTube Shorts concept, which is I will genericize this question to what I call short video content, short video as a medium, and looking at the way short video has changed the way people spend time. And so we will come back to that, Rebecca, about the role of short video versus email versus still image versus animated GIF. Okay, so we're going to get there a little bit, but yes, short video is very seductive. It's very addictive. And if you watch, I don't know if you have an opportunity to watch younger people on their phones, but my kids are on the swim team. And so sometimes in between on swim meets, the older kids on the swim team who have an iPhone, I'll watch what they're doing. And they are literally just scrolling videos. It makes my head spin to watch them on their iPhone. This data is coming from Google Analytics 4. So again, here I've said Google Analytics 4 twice. One of my first things to do with a new client is I say, can I please log into your Google Analytics 4? Can you please give me view-only access to your data? Because I just want to look at what happened in the last year. I want to see things. I want to see with this client, what are the age breakdowns of people on your website? Because I will talk again to many organizations and they say, we want more young people. And then I'll show them the Google Analytics data to say, look at your age breakdown on your website. 25 to 34 is your biggest number. 45, 54, 35, 44. You've got over 500,000 in this set of data. 18 to 24s on your website right now, you know? And so that's one of those little ahas to say, they are engaging with us. If we are aware of this, if we're able to look at our data and we're able to see the demographic age breakdown of people on our website, at least we're beginning to see that they are interacting with us. Now, the question is, what do we need to do to extend the session time for the different ages to get them to click something? We don't want them to just read. We want them to start engaging with our content. And 29, check on time. I think we're good. Okay, let me show you. This is a little bit of a breakdown of GA4 data slightly differently. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm sorting it by what's called source and medium. Okay, I'm not using what's called the default channel grouping. I'm breaking it down a little more specifically, in which case it's making the point I made earlier, which is, gosh, look at all that Google organic search. And if we have time, we'll go into Google organic a little further. But right now, let me kind of bring it back to look at the Bing organic. Google cost per click, CPC. This is paid Google, okay? Look at TikTok. Whoa, driving a lot of visits from TikTok, paid at this point for this client. TikTok video, right? So we're trying, you are trying to find these new sources of audience and drive them to the websites. As long as we're looking at okay, this is my little soapbox. Let me just give me a second. If I look at you, you look to me like this. When I log into your Google Analytics, what I'm looking for is how much money did you raise last year online? That's my first question. That's my main question. This client raised $1.3 million online last year, okay? Now, Google Analytics money is a little bit less than real life. So this client in real life, if I looked inside of their CRM, is going to tell me they raised $1.5 million online. Because of cookie settings and all sorts of privacy and all sorts of things, we can't actually track everybody, but we can track most people. And then here's January through December. You see the year rolling on. Oh, there's a little spike. There's a little spike. We call these tent poles. It's like you put a pole in the tent. Well, what do you think that is? Giving Tuesday. What do you think that is? December 31st. Okay. So this is what I call a prototypical client view if I'm looking at your GA4 data. Here's a big client. The number's way bigger. The spikes are way higher, but they're similar in shape. Okay. There's a similar shape where it's kind of like drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. And we raise half of all of our online money in the holiday between November 15th and December 31st. And that's very stressful for all of us because we're kind of like biting our nails. Once it turns November 15th, we're biting our nails to get half of our money by the end of the year. So what can we do to push that revenue a little earlier in the year and be a little less nervous during the holidays? I see this when I see you. When I look at your website, I literally am thinking this in my mind. I'm thinking about a big old funnel where people are coming into your funnel, and I'm just trying to figure out how to turn them into money, okay? And I don't want to be crude about it, but I'm a fundraiser. People bring us in because they want to accelerate their digital revenue. I'm not saying there's not a role for the funnel to produce volunteers, to produce leads, to produce email address, all sorts of good things in the top of the funnel. Usually our team is brought in because they want more out of the bottom of the funnel and they want money. They want measurable revenue. And for those of you who are quite picky and demanding, you want monthly donors. You actually don't really want a lot of one-time donors unless we can convert them to monthly. But we're really looking for these recurring monthly donors falling out of the bottom of this funnel. So again, keep these models in mind that you're a big funnel. And what we're trying to do with any client is figure out where is the audience leaking. Not everybody's becoming a donor. Why not? Where are they leaving? Why are they leaving? Google Analytics 4 data. So I'm looking at the client's mix of traffic type, platform by device category. Notice out of the 20 million active users, 14 million are on a mobile device. Whoa, okay. So when we talk about these mobile responsive websites, I always say, no, I think you want a mobile first website. I think most of the people on your website are actually looking at you through an iPhone, okay? So as you think about your website, if you're old like me, your first impression will be what you see on a laptop. But I want you to check that impulse and say, actually, I need to look at my content through my iPhone because that's how my audience is seeing me. Now, the rub is out of the 12 million for this client tracked through Google Analytics 4, only 2.5 came through mobile. Most of that money came through desktop. So here's a gigantic opportunity that I'll set up, and we'll get to a little bit later. I'll even set it up for Fundraise Up to say, if there's anything we can do to convert that mobile traffic 2% better, I'm very interested in that because that's a lot of money, okay? I take pictures like this of your data. Here's a client we're working with that raises between $750,000 and $1 million online. Our smallest client at Stella raised about $250,000 online last year. Our largest client at Stella raised about, $16 million online. That's kind of the zone. And then we got everybody in between. Let me show you one that's in that kind of $1 million mark, which is kind of a fun place to be. Oh my gosh, we're going to raise $1 million online. And I'm breaking it down by source of the traffic. Where did the money come from? Not the traffic, the money. Let me clarify that. Most of this money came from organic searches. The second biggest moneymaker was email. The third biggest was direct traffic to the website. In other words, if I'm running charity water, it would be charitywater.org. Charitywater.org would be direct. I type it in, pop, go, direct traffic. Cross network is PMAX. Google, when you pay Google to drive traffic, they've made most of their billions and billions of dollars by paying for search. Search is the moneymaker because search is what's about to happen in the future. They will sell search terms and traffic to the highest bidder. That's most of the way we spend money in Google, but you know, they've introduced AI into their advertising platform. It's called Performance Max, and it shows up in Google Analytics data as cross network. And it's one of my favorite new channels of traffic. And if we have time, we'll get into it. And then here's referral, organic search, paid search, and unassigned. Here's a little bit bigger client up to the $2 million mark. Paid search is their main moneymaker. Organic search is number 2, direct traffic to their website. Email, unassigned means we need to track this better. Referral, organic, social, cross network. Here's a biggie, organic search, direct traffic, email, paid search, You will notice these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, let's call it. These 10 channels are the same for everybody. Your distinction is going to come with how you manage your channels, okay? And what am I looking for? I'm looking for a balanced portfolio because, you know, as an investor, the way for me to de-risk my investments is to balance that portfolio. As a digital fundraiser, the way for me to de-risk my platform and my money is to balance that portfolio. I see many of you, when we start working, over-reliant on email, and it worries me. And I'll tell you why. Because I can't control how Google is going to change the way Gmail handles email. I can't control it. So what I want to do is take email and make it one of your 6 or 8 pistons in your engine. I want it to be nice and level with your paid ads, with your organic search, with your direct traffic, with your cross domain. I want to balance those channels as much as possible so that no matter who does what, if iPhone wants to change their privacy settings and blow away Meta's ads, fine. I got a whole bunch of other digital ads I can rely on. Let's see, 10:37. I think what I'm going to do is just show a couple of tools. And Brian, I'm going to hand it over to you in 5 minutes. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
I'm not going to talk about DeepSeek. We'll come back to this. How many of you are starting to use AI tools in your data? I'm using Autopilot. Autopilot joins all of my online meetings. Most of my meetings these days are online, which is kind of an interesting thing because then I can invite an AI assistant to my meetings. And now that I've got meetings and meetings and meetings inside of Otter, what I can do is I can query Otter to say, Otter, what are the themes coming up in the client meetings? What are the main pain points of our clients? And it will interpret what it's recorded and give me very intelligent answers. So I'm going to start to show, here are ways we're starting to use AI in our lives. This is kind of a fun one. I don't know if you all have played with these AI photo shoots, but I took a bunch of selfies that were random inside of my Google Photos. They weren't necessarily great shots, but I fed it into Insta headshots. And if you see me on LinkedIn right now, that's what I put up there. That's what the AI generated based on these kind of random selfies. And I kind of liked it. I was like, okay, that'll be my new LinkedIn profile. It's AI generated. It's not actually me. It's an AI version of me. We're starting to see, the reason I said real at the beginning, and I won't play this whole video clip because I don't want to take too much time here, but we're starting to see influencers on social media who are purely AI driven. Aitana, this is a little BBC clip talking about Aitana, who is a purely generated AI model. And people are following Aitana on Instagram and on TikTok. And many people don't know that she's not real. She's purely AI generated. Let me show you this. Liz on our team found Notebook LM last year and thought it was great. And now Google bought it, by the way. So if you log into Notebook LM, it's owned by Google. And if any of you have Google Workspaces, you probably got an email last week saying, hey, we've added Notebook LM to our suite of Google Workspace services. What I did is I took a PDF from Canadian Cancer, and I fed it into Notebook LM, and I said,
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep
podcast.
dive today into a program that provides wigs and breast prostheses to those dealing with cancer in Canada. So we're going to be going beyond just the statistics.
Yeah.
And really exploring like the human impact of these services.
Yeah, it's interesting. We often think of wigs and prosthetics as just, cosmetic. But they can actually be really crucial in helping people maintain a sense of self, especially when, cancer treatment can drastically alter their physical appearance. Like imagine going...
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep... Hey everyone, welcome back.
I won't play the whole thing, but you get the idea. Now with AI, we can change the medium very easily from a PDF to a podcast, right? So just consider that for a second. Here's another example where I took a page from their website. I could see from Google Analytics some popular pages. So I took a popular page and I said, hey, AI, turn this page of text into a short video to get back to Rebecca's question. And here's what it created.
What if I told you your support could change the future of cancer care? The Canadian Cancer Society is leading the charge with a remarkable $44.7 million investment in cancer research and innovation.
Now this is just me messing around. This is not on brand or anything, okay? I'm just seeing what will the engine do to a page at this point? And then given that capacity, what could I do to help our clients reach audiences in ways that they want to be reached? Let me end with this, and I'm going to hand it over to Brian. We love Canadian cancer, and a lot of my examples come from them because they're so good. So here's something on their public YouTube channel, which is one of their VPs talking about why I would consider leaving cancer.
Hi there, my name is Stuart Edmonds and I'm the Executive Vice President of Mission Research and Advocacy at the Canadian Cancer Society. I'm reaching out today to share just how grateful we are that you decided to remember the Canadian Cancer Society. Hi there, my name is Stuart Edmonds.
You get the idea. It's a very professional video, great idea. Let's use video, let's make the pitch. I threw that into AI to create this.
大家好，我叫斯图尔特·埃德蒙兹，我是加拿大验证协会的使命研究和倡导执行副总裁。我今天联系您是想表达我们对您决定在艺术规划中技术加。大家好，我叫斯图尔特·埃德。
You get the idea. It's going to give us a lot of potential, some benefits, and some risks. And with that set up, Brian, can I hand it over to you?
You bet. I think yep.
I'm going to stop sharing, then you share.
Share. You betcha. Here we go.
Thank you, Brian.
Hopefully you can all see this. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it. AI versus authentic interactions is what we're seeing.
Okay, fantastic. Now I'm just going to get the image out of the way. So about 2 years ago, I went to a conference in Washington, and they were talking all about AI. It was really the first time that I'd really heard what AI was and what it could do. It was literally 2 years ago. And then fast forward to today, and it's all everybody is talking about. And as I said earlier, grappling with. 2 years ago, this was my attitude about AI. It was basically AI versus writers and real people and real interactions, authenticity, which frankly is the bedrock of every charity. It's the currency we work with, because if a donor doesn't believe in what we're doing or doesn't believe that we are doing what we say we're doing, then everything falls apart. So why aren't you changing? There we go. So the real megatrend is about how we bring emotional intelligence to artificial intelligence. It really is all about feeling authentic to the donor. So I actually went into ChatGPT and I said, give me a copywriter as a robot writing, representing creativity coming out of AI. And this is what ChatGPT thinks a copywriter, inauthentic, fake robot working at an ad agency might look like and what an agency might look like. It's a lot of color. But we are also talking about humans and the role of the humans. And I say grappling because a lot of organizations and agencies themselves are really figuring out what role AI should play when it comes to our fundraising. And I'm talking about all channels here, regardless of the channel. The stuff Philip was just talking about, where you have these fake avatars on screen, that's great for some things, but is it right for your organization? So I saw this graphic and I thought it was really interesting to think about this in the context of what we do in a given day for charity or within a charity. And there is a role for 100% machine. Rebecca said in the chat, I saw it earlier, she said, Otter saved her life. That's AI, that's 100% machine taking notes in her meetings. So she doesn't have to think about that. She can just think big about whatever she's dealing with on that day. Then there are degrees of which machines should play a role. And that's what we're talking about. Everybody is wondering how much machine there should be in what we do, especially when we're client facing or donor facing rather. You have to think about your brand, and you have to think about your donors and your beneficiaries, the people that you're helping. What feels real to them? Somebody also in the chat talked about, should we have a policy? Well, yes, your charities, you're using donor dollars, and donors care about what's real and what isn't. And they want to believe that they are having an impact and that the money that you're taking from them, that you are taking in good faith, is actually being put to good use in a real and authentic way. So authenticity, again, is the currency with which we need to work. This is my attitude, and where we've sort of netted out on where we should be using AI in terms of donor interactions, in terms of the communications, the way we talk, and the way we communicate with donors on a day-to-day basis. So what does that mean? What role should the machine play? And this is up for debate. And again, if anybody has an opinion that's different, please jump into the chat, and Carolina, feel free to interrupt me. Boilerplate direction and briefs to your agency or the creative team that you're using. There are parts of the brief that are standard, that are, go across. Your brand is your brand. Those things are in the brief. The machine can replicate it across different briefs for different campaigns. Yes, first draft of copy. Can we have the brief put into ChatGPT and output the first draft of copy? Think of it as a junior copywriter. And then we can layer in those things like brand and nuance and tone and the CEO's voice or the beneficiary's voice. A writer, a human, could do that. But the first draft or alternative outer envelope lines or email subject lines, even social media posts copy can be written by a machine with adult supervision. Adapting final DM copy to first draft email. Again, feed the copy into ChatGPT from a final DM client approved copy and generate email copy out of that and variations on it, variables, tweaks to imagery, something like this. This is actually, we are continuing to pick on Canadian Cancer Society. I know a couple of you are here. You recognize this image. This is a real person. This person is not an avatar. She's a real human being, and she was the person we were talking about in our breast cancer campaign for the Canadian Cancer Society. The only part of this image that is not real is, I don't know if you can see my mouse, the bottom right corner of the image the image wasn't big enough to use in the format that we wanted to use it. So we actually kept the landscape going in the image so that we could complete it and use this full bleed within the context of this envelope. So it's okay to use AI to tweak imagery as long as it's used in a, you're not making something real fake. You're just augmenting to help with the production. This is another beneficiary for a cancer mailing, somebody that benefited from the research of the Canadian Cancer Society. That is a real image. It wasn't going to work with the background and what she was actually wearing. So we gave her a different background and just lightened the color, put her in CCS blue, and used her on the front of the envelope. This is just art, as you can see, but you can see there are ways that don't impact the donor's impression of authenticity or what's real. Everything else about this was real. So what role should the human play in a best case scenario? Developing strategy. That's still two people getting into a room or three people getting into a room, talking about the problem and overcoming it with a proper and a smart strategy. Messaging direction, that too takes into consideration the challenge you are trying to overcome, the impact you are trying to have, the case for support you are trying to make. Very often we interview real people. Examples I just gave for the Canadian Cancer Society, we often interview people who have gone through a cancer journey, as we do for other charities as well. Those questions and interviewing questions and actually interviewing the beneficiary is done by a human. Integrating nuance of a brand. There's the written brand guidelines, and there are the things we just know an organization likes or doesn't like, the people that work there, the board, the nuance that behind the brand, the reading between the lines, the subtleties that aren't always written, the unwritten rules. That takes a human. Integrating nuance of the CEO's voice. I'll get into an example of where tone is hard to capture coming out of ChatGPT. It's almost impossible to make it sound like a real human because it is drawing on other things and other voices. So there is, if you know the organization and you know the leader of that organization and you've internalized that voice, you are able to capture it in actual copy, regardless of channel. And again, integrating nuance of the beneficiary's voice, same thing. You will never get a better quote than you will interviewing an actual person who has experienced whatever it is that the charity is in business to help them with. And then copy revisions. It's not always as easy as replacing a word here or moving a sentence or moving a paragraph. Very often, oh, hello. Very often it's about folding copy in, moving things around, making sure the flow works and feels natural, not stilted. So that's still best done by a human. And then integrating channels conceptually. Integration, we're actually having another webinar at the end of February 27th. You'll be able to register for that at the end of this webinar through a QR code. Integrating channels is not a simple thing. It's not just about picking up an image in a headline and inserting it across channels. There's strategy involved. There's nuance again, and we'll get into that more in the next webinar, but it does take a human. So emotional intelligence, if you've worked with me before, you've often heard me talk about heart voice, and that is about bringing emotional intelligence to artificial intelligence or bringing it to everything, frankly. It's it's what connects donors emotionally to your cause, to your organization, and to the people that you're helping. So here we are picking on CCS again. I'm going to read you very quickly two blocks of copy. This was the opening of a letter. I've asked ChatGPT, I took the messaging direction from a brief, an actual brief, and fed it into ChatGPT, and I asked it to come up with a copy for me. This is the first example. I'm not going to tell you whether this is really Marie Noel or not. But you will decide and put it in the chat after, once you've heard both versions. And CCS people, I know you know the answer, so please do not tell the answer. Every 3 minutes, someone hears the words, "You have cancer." For them and their loved ones, life will never be the same. As a cancer researcher, I've spent years studying this disease, searching for answers. But everything changed the day I glimpsed an image on a diagnostic ultrasound and knew I was looking at a tumor. That's when I shifted from being a researcher to a patient. It was a surreal and deeply humbling moment. So that's A. And, okay, why aren't you moving? There we go. This is B. Ever since I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted to make a difference for people with cancer. My dream was to become a cancer researcher, and I was well on my way, pursuing a doctorate and working in a cancer research lab when I found a lump in my breast. You always hope for the best, but during the ultrasound, I looked over at the screen and my heart dropped. As a scientist, I knew what I was seeing and what it meant. In that instant, I went from cancer researcher to cancer patient. The day after my family gathered for our holiday celebration, I received the diagnosis. I had a very aggressive form of cancer. Okay, there we go. So was it Marie A, Marie Noel A, or Marie Noel B? I can't see the chat, so.
People are answering B. Oh, I've got one A. Oh, we're getting both. Majority of B, it seems.
Okay, majority B. Well,
We're getting some
people
A's, though, as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So the people that pick B are correct. That was the actual copy. And let's break it down a little bit why. If you think about the machine things I talked about earlier, what can the machine do? What should the machine do? It'll talk more tersely. It will be, oops, sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh man, I'm having issues with my clicker. Sorry, folks. So this is the actual Marie Noel. Sorry, guys. The clicker is not typical Mac warning. Okay, we're just going to jump over it. But there was more emotive language in the Marie Noel B. Ever since I was 8 years old, you're drawing on a past. You're reflecting like a human reflects. My heart dropped. It's more emotive language that a real human being actually uses. If you look back, the machine is talking more about them and their. It's separate from the individual experience. It's more arm's length. There's less copy. More emotive copy does take more words. And the emotion, it was a surreal and deeply humbling moment, isn't as emotive as I went from cancer researcher to cancer patient, a human being with a disease. So we're seeing more emotive language, and we're seeing more personal reflection, nuance in the actual copy written by a human. So how do you break a heart voice in 10 easy steps? A terser tone, we saw that in Marie Noel A. More generic emotional tone, language like the example that we saw, humbling experience isn't really emotive language. Loss of nuance in a human voice, drawing on past reflections, bringing that to copy. Lacks empathy. Again, you want to be careful when you're dealing with, for example, disease or a crisis area. If you're an international humanitarian aid organization, there's a lot of pain and suffering in the world, and you want to be sensitive to that in the language that you use, in the copy that you choose. Or for use of buzzwords or stats, pronouns, them and their, again, not I and we and our. More cliche, branding consistency, again, those things that are the unwritten rules, the things you just know you would never do as an organization that get picked up. Again, missing cultural sensitivities, enough said there. Over-reliance on stats. Again, it's not bad to have stats in copy. They are your proof points, but that's not necessarily where you want to start to engage a donor and keep them reading through your copy. Playing into donor skepticism about authenticity. So if it feels fake to you, if it feels fake because it's drawing on what already exists, it's going to feel fake to a donor, and that's going to stop them from wanting to donate. And sameness, if we are all using AI and letting that fly without bringing in that nuance that a human being understands how to do, everything is going to start sounding the same, and donors are going to start recognizing that across channels. I'm not just talking about direct mail here. I'm talking about social. I'm talking about every place that a donor interacts with your brand. So this is really where we end up. I hope I've proven the point. I'd love to debate it or hear other perspectives on it, but that takes us pretty much to time. I'm going to hand it back to Gray, over to Gray, or to Jess. That's right. Over to you, Jess.
Yep, it's coming over to me. Thanks so much, Brian. Okay, so we're going to kind of move now into some of the conversation around, Philip shared insights that we see in Google Analytics, for example, your web traffic and where is that coming from, and seeing, oh, wow, a lot of our traffic, for example, comes from mobile. We're not converting that. So it's there's a lot of things that we're seeing in the technology that gives us signals as fundraisers, and kind of the next step of that challenge is how do we take those signals, those tools, and now how do we actually leverage them as fundraisers? So how can we use new technology that's in the marketplace to help drive higher revenue, more conversions, a better donor experience? So I am so thrilled to talk to two of our partners, Fundraise Up and Dataro, about how their tools help to drive more revenue. So Sal, I can see you there.
I'm here.
Awesome.
You hear me all right?
So I think we're going to walk through your platform and kind of how you guys use AI and developing technology to help your clients.
Fantastic. All right. Let me just confirm that you see my screen all right.
Yes, we can see you and your screen.
Fantastic. Great. All right. We're going to dive in then, Jess. And I know you'll have thoughts and things along the way as we dive in. First, actually, before I jump in, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Salvatore Sampietro. Sal works just fine. Chief Community Officer at Fundraise Up. And I am excited to be in Toronto here at the Stephen Thomas office and doing this live with everyone, which is pretty fantastic. Before we get started, I don't know if we can drop my link to LinkedIn in the chat. I'd love to get you that link now so that you can connect. We can keep the conversation going, share learnings. I love to learn from the community. I love to learn from you. And I sometimes have something that might be useful for the community as well. So with that, let's kind of jump in. All right. Jess, if I don't have access to my chat screen, so if you can read off some of the responses, everyone. Friction tolerance threshold. Friction tolerance threshold. What do you think that means? I'm giving no hints. Drop it in the chat. I'll give you about 5-10 seconds. Okay. Let's see. Friction tolerance threshold. What do we think that means? Get some shy people here.
You might have stumped everyone. How much?
Oh, here we go.
Up with our patience with bugs in tech, the point in which it's too hard to move forward.
How much I'm willing to put up. Yep, awesome, great. Okay, cool. So we're going to dive into this concept, friction tolerance threshold. The friction tolerance threshold is how much friction that I, as a human, will tolerate to complete a transaction. That can be a transaction of various kinds, right? So you have your friction tolerance meter here that I pulled out of the Google Slides shapes library. Nothing fancy. You have almost no friction, and you have lots of friction. So when we're buying things, and just you see this and you have kids, you do a lot of shopping online. We got to save time.
Yep.
You can almost buy things by accident. Like, it's so easy to get your food delivered. It's so easy with Amazon. You got one click and it's on the way. Looking at Pipcorn here in the middle, their checkout, they prioritize only wallets. There's no credit card even there. You can get to the credit card, but their assumption is you got something else, right?
Right.
So this is e-commerce investing in low to no friction experiences. So when you're buying, we see that e-commerce removes friction wherever possible because it's known to decrease revenue. One click and it's in the cart. Get that purchase completed. Here's your mobile wallet. Let me, auto-complete the address for you. Whatever they're doing there, right? So when you're buying, you've got a fairly low level of friction, and the friction tolerance threshold is high. And I'm going to explain a bit more about that in a minute, right? But when I'm buying, I will actually put up with quite a bit of hassle. And Taylor Swift proves that for us.
Yeah.
Did you try to get tickets, Jess?
No, I did not try to get tickets.
Okay. I have an 8-year-old daughter. I was pretty much like, feet to the fire. You better try, Dad. So I tried, and it's not frictionless. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Because you had to sign up and you get a code and you have a certain number of hours, you got to get in line, you got to hit refresh. But the threshold for all of that friction was really high.
Right.
Right. So that's an example that demonstrates for us the tolerance threshold concept.
And Sal, do you think that our tolerance has continued to change? I just think about as technology advances, we get less and less patient. And
Sure.
even 5 years ago, your friction tolerance was probably higher because of the limitations of the technology.
You just didn't have the expectation then.
True.
Right. It wasn't there. There was no bar that was already set because we hadn't gotten there yet. You go back to when Apple Pay came out, maybe 10 years ago. And before that, we didn't know that you could just Face ID your transaction through. Right. So you didn't expect it. But now everywhere you go, you're Face IDing, you're fingerprinting, and you're done. Okay. So that's buying. That's the concept of buying and low friction, because the for-profit and e-commerce industry knows got to remove the friction to increase sales. So we saw some examples of purchasing. We saw popcorn, we saw, Amazon, we saw Uber. These are 3 examples of donation forms that I found yesterday. These are not screenshots from 2001. I promise you, these are today. Okay. The first one, you click donate, it opens a new tab. Now, I only am showing the bottom half of that first example there. The top half was just about 4 or 5 paragraphs of text. And then this was at the very bottom. Okay. Imagine finding something like that in your buying experiences. The middle one, again, very long. That was on desktop that I took that screenshot. So it was a very long page with all of the content squeezed over to the left. I cropped out all of the right side. So that was how that donation form was presented. So it was basically presenting a mobile formatted on desktop so that you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone and have the same desktop and the same mobile without having to actually have 2 experiences.
Mhm.
And then the final one here is the fourth click in a series of 7 clicks to get to a donation completion, right? It was click donate, go to a page. Do you want to give one time? Do you want to give to this fund? It was all these steps to get to the screen. And then I'm still about halfway there. Okay. Giving. Donation forms are riddled with unnecessary frictions. And I say unnecessary, I mean there's technology to solve for them. When you have all of this friction, your conversion rate suffers. The number of people that Stephen Thomas, that Stella, that all of your campaigns, your email marketing are sending to your donation form, the conversion rate of those people giving suffers because of friction. Yes, there are other things, your messaging, your modeling, your audiences, etc. But the do or die point is, does that donation form allow them to give easily, unobstructed? So when I'm giving, the friction tolerance threshold is pretty low, and I'll talk about why, right? And the friction level in a donation form is very high comparatively to our buying experiences as humans, not as donors, not as consumers, as humans. So some examples of friction. Nonprofits might only take one or few payment methods. Unclear errors. I was telling you before we joined here that I went to make a donation the other day and I clicked the submit button and every field just turned red. It didn't tell me which field was the problem, right? That would never happen in buying something on, Bombas socks or Zappos or wherever you're shopping. That won't happen. They're going to say, please fix the zip code or whatever it is. Yeah. Nonprofits are working with dated UI, user interfaces and experiences. They look dated. I mean, we just saw these examples here. Do these look like 2025?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And what's the message we're sending to our donors? By giving them this, we don't need to be the martyr and say, well, we have really old, pretty ugly, comparatively donation forms because we're saving you money. The message is not that. That's not the one that gets delivered. It is, do these people know how to effectively steward the money I'm giving them for delivering an experience that's going to deliver? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Like, do they have the technology? Are they good stewards and have the technology that's going to allow them to get more donations? And right.
And then the other part that we have is the mobile difficult. The difference between mobile responsive and mobile optimized is the difference between shopping on Amazon in the browser on your phone versus shopping in the app. And
right. I think we're talking about this. I think we've gone past the time of just saying like, oh, is my homepage mobilely responsive, in that, oh, it will show up on a homepage on your mobile device. It's now, is your homepage, is your donation form actually designed specifically for mobile when you're using a mobile device? And we're all used to apps. We're used to things that are mobile first, designed to be used on a phone.
Correct. And considerations there are things like the screen size. Where does the thumb naturally fall on the screen, where I put my buttons? A lot of attention to detail to make that mobile first, that mobile specific experience. And then another thing that I see that is for me, a disconnect from this decade is I don't see enough nonprofits with autocomplete of the address. I haven't typed my full address in shopping or an Uber for a decade.
Right.
But nonprofits are still enter all of your data. And then what do we get? We get data that's formatted incorrectly, inconsistent. We have to clean it. We're creating work for ourselves, right? So we can give a better experience for them and ultimately for ourselves as well as administrators of the data.
Right. And Larry just said to me, he said, in the chat, do you care enough about me to give me the best experience online as a donor, right? Like, do you want to make it as easy as possible? And that's a relationship moment. And it moves it from just a transaction to a relationship moment for you and the donor, for you as the organization and the donor.
That's key. I mean, I think my third bullet, I didn't even read it here, but it was the trusting connection. You damage that if you are delivering an experience and you use relationships, same concept. It takes a hit for sure. So the friction tolerance threshold, let's wrap that concept up. When buying, tolerance is higher because we want to get the thing.
Mhm.
And e-commerce knows that even though it's higher, let's remove as much as possible. When giving, we get the thing when we click donate, not
Right.
when we finish the donation. And as donors, especially with impulse giving, so search ads, social ads, especially in those scenarios, donors are almost looking for an excuse not to give because they already got the thing when they checked it out. And we're going to ask everybody in the chat, what do you think the thing is? Start putting that in your head for a second. But
Yeah.
the bar is higher for nonprofits, and we need to work harder and do even better than e-commerce because they're getting the thing when they click donate. Everybody in the chat, what is the thing that you get when you click donate? Not even finish the donation. When I click donate, what are you getting? What's the thing that you're getting? Anybody have any ideas? Larry says it. Larry knows my talk track, that I'm a good person, right? You're getting immediate confirmation. There we go, Barbara.
The feel good. Yep.
Feel good, Carol. We're getting feel good. We're getting immediate confirmation that we're generous and we care. If I finished or not. And if I don't finish the donation because you won't take Apple Pay, because the fields are too small on my phone, because the errors, I can't figure it out, and I wanted to make a quick donation, but I got to get my kid out of the bath, or the subway's coming, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
That's on you, nonprofit. Like, the blame is absolved from the donor for not powering through that high friction experience. But if they need that new pair of shoes, they're going to power through, even
Right.
if there's a lot of friction removed, right? Even I do have autocomplete and Apple Pay, etc. We could also not, and they would still be more likely to do it. Sharon says, I also want confirmation that the donation went through and an instant tax receipt. Next after Sharon said, 27% of nonprofits do not send a tax receipt within, I think it was like 30 days. And I think after that, they just kind of gave up tracking, like giving up hope. That's wild. But yes, we also do want the confirmation the donation went through. So that's the thing. The thing that we get is serotonin, dopamine, and confirmation of my generosity and my good citizenship. How do we fix it? How do we fix it? There's really only one way, one road to doing that, and that is by leveling up. We have to level up and provide an experience to donors that is on par with their experiences everywhere else that they give money to experience a net positive impact in their own life. We have to meet that experience because right now, if we don't, just like I'm going around all day and I'm Apple Paying here and I'm doing one click because I need dinner on the way and I'm doing these things. And then I get an email from nonprofit X and it says, can you please give? There's an emergency. And I hit the button and I'm like,
right.
What quantum leap episode did I enter where I'm now in,
yeah.
Right? Let's like, what is this 1997 form, right? Whatever. So let's look at some examples in play. Technology exists. Fundraise Up is one of those technologies to make this possible. And we make it possible without a burden on the org. So we want to deliver a dynamic donation experience. When you open your Uber, Jessica, it's going to show the cars that you typically choose.
Right.
For me, mine's Uber Green, and it knows that I want this, and it knows at this time, it knows that I want my sound off. It's a dynamic experience.
Yep.
Amazon, when you open your homepage, it's a dynamic experience for you.
Right.
It's different than mine.
Yep.
Today in the nonprofit space with legacy technologies, the examples that I've shown, and by the way, those 3 examples were not small mom pop nonprofits. Those were massive organizations at $100 million budgets and more. Almost criminal. Now, today, most of your legacy tech is the same interface for everyone. Hit the button, same page, same options, same ask amounts, same donation amount asked, etc. Also today, with modern platforms like Fundraise Up, you get a personalized interface for each donor. I'm going to get a mobile experience because I'm on my phone. I'm going to get a different ask amount because I'm in Toronto versus Saskatchewan. I'm going to get different payment options because I'm on an Android, not on an iPhone, so on and so forth. So we're going to create experiences that cater to the donor and meet them where they are, not force them and burden them to meet us where we are, which is in 2003.
And I think what's so interesting about that, and I know we've talked about this at length, is I think, we'll talk with Gray and Dataro about segmentation and CRM, but for so long as fundraisers, we've been kind of pigeonholed in using CRM data when we're trying to personalize. I saw in the chat, someone said personalization. It's like, okay, what was the last gift you gave and when? But now with technology, and we talk a lot about this, like what's the pre-CRM data? Stuff before you even make a donation. And that's where technology like Fundraise Up can use AI to leverage things. And I love this one, stat that you've given where iPhone users give at a higher amount than Android, like
30%.
30% more. So if I'm coming to, and I'll put Philip on blast. He uses an Android. So if I use an iPhone, my ask amounts are going to be 30% higher because that's what the data has shown. So we are no longer shackled by that CRM data that is rear view. It's after. We're able to actually meet the donor before they become a donor, which I think is just exciting.
It's massive, and there's two benefits there. One, you're not using PII data, right? So all of the data that I'm showing here in these examples, that's all anonymous data drawing on correlations. Does it mean necessarily that Philip gives less than you? No, but the data supports that Android donors as a larger base give less. The phone devices are typically less expensive. It meets people where they are with different income levels, et cetera. So that's a correlative data. And the second benefit is you get to erase bias. We're not looking at bias, any data points that contribute to bias, right? We're not looking at gender. We're not looking at things like that. So, all right, let's move through. So AI. So how is AI doing that in this platform? So here you see a screenshot of a mobile device. It's a very different donation experience than if you went to a desktop because it's built for mobile. So here the AI is going to predict the best dynamic donor experience that will result in a donation from that person. What does that mean? Change the UI. I just said mobile versus desktop. The ask amounts will change. We'll select the currency based on where they are, right? A lot of nonprofits have donor diaspora, donors that move abroad or are expats and they want to give back to their home place, but they live now in a different currency. So let's let them give in that currency and so on. Or you just have an international donor base. Language, we can detect the language of their browser and serve up that donation experience in that language without any translation work, right? Frequency, we know certain correlations about time of day, device, etc. Of should we default to give once or should we default to monthly? Without damaging any relationships, without damaging any revenue, we can make safe assumptions on what we should default to. And then payment methods, right? So AI is going to order the payment methods and stack rank them according to what is going to convert the best. Here's an example of what this looks like on desktop. So we saw this on a mobile device, this on desktop. Just keep me honest on time. You give me a little 2-minute warning, whatever it is.
We're doing good. We're doing good.
This is an example of an account that Stephen Thomas works, a nonprofit, Canadian Cancer Society. It's an example of how this defaulted to monthly in this case. Let's draw another comparison to that e-commerce human transaction experience that they see hundreds of times more often than they do a donation experience that we're trying to meet, right? We're trying to level up.
Yep.
Subscribe and save. When I get my dog food, when I get things on Amazon, it's always, hey, you want to subscribe and save? Do you want to save 10% and just put this on autopilot? We've taken that same concept that people are accustomed already to see. We're not introducing new things. We're doing the same thing in a new context, very different. So AI can determine when and when not to propose a switch to monthly. If they're giving $1,000, you do not want to roll the dice and say,
right,
would you like to make a $300 a month gift? No, because I just got my bonus and I'm making it now. And I know in 2 months, it ain't going to be here. So then the AI would say, let's not do that, right? What is it? Leave the gun, take the cannolis. It's like, let's take the money. That's from The Godfather, right? Okay. And when you do this, you'll convert about 3 to 10%, depending on vertical, donor base, et cetera, of your one-time donors to monthly, which results in a 3 to 10x monthly donor acquisition. We've seen orgs, and a number of them you all work with, they've said our monthly giving, by allowing AI to propose this, has doubled or tripled or quadrupled the number of monthly donors we are acquiring. This is another example of that. So here you see, here it's offering 2 options. Here it's offering 1 option because the gift was lower, right? It was a smaller value gift, so we're going to try to get them to convert here. And then here is a post donation. This one actually works really well. My mom called me once. She said, I gave $25 to Boys and Girls Club of America, and it asked me if I want to do $5 a month. I did it. I said, Mom, did you know that's Fundraise Up? She goes, no, I didn't know that was them. I was like, cool. Well, where you been? But all good. So that's an example there of that. Convenience fee. We're all paying convenience fees. Uber's throwing on convenience fees on the food, on the drive, on everything. Ticketmaster's throwing on convenience fees when you buy the tickets. We're all used to seeing convenience fees. That's what this is. We're not putting something new. We're taking something existing, putting it in a new context, allowing donors to cover transaction costs. And I was sharing this stat with you, Jess. I didn't have the hard numbers, but I can get them and happy to share them. We see longer retention when donors cover fees on monthly. And we see a higher likelihood of making a second gift that year.
I love that.
Let your imagination run wild as to why.
Yeah.
Right. For me, it's a deeper connection. You've given them an opportunity to show 4% more generosity, right? They feel more vested in your organization. It's got a trickle down effect.
Yep.
And when you provide a user experience that's smooth, they're very willing. I think we're trending somewhere between 85 and 90% of donors will cover the transaction costs. That's the software.
Because they had a good experience and they understand that, again, donors are not unreasonable. They understand that things cost money for organizations.
Sure.
So, they've had a really nice experience thus far. Yeah, sure. I'll add an extra $2.50 to my donation. It's, that's just, again, the expectation's there. So you're not asking them to do anything out of the ordinary.
Right. It's expected. And I've seen some reports from some companies that have some of that legacy tech, and they'll say, well, yes, in the cover costs, the conversion rate drops. Well, yeah, if it's a bad experience, just like the tip I'm going to leave in a restaurant is going to be lower if I get a bad experience, right? So you got to have the whole package for this to work. You can't just take something that's very dated and not addressing those donor experience issues, that friction tolerance threshold.
Right.
You can't just throw a cover fees on anything and think it's just going to play out. It's got to be a package.
Yep.
Self-service dashboard, give control to your donors. Let them log in, let them get their receipts, let them change their payment method, let them change the amount, let them cancel their donation if they want to, their monthly gift. Don't require them to dial in and call and have an awkward conversation. We see so much higher retention by giving them a big, fat, bold cancel button. By giving them that, we see longer, they stay longer. And the majority, somewhere in the tune of like 80-90% of people that click cancel are just testing to see if it's a real button.
Right.
And they don't do anything. They just leave. Like, I'm good.
Right.
Right. I've had trust issues with nonprofits in the past before I was even in the space where I made a monthly gift and I couldn't find how to cancel anywhere because I had lost my job at that time and I needed to cancel it. And I thought I was scammed. Right. So we can't allow that to happen. We're working against ourselves.
Yep.
It's a short-term play.
We have about 1 minute left, 1 or 2 minutes left, Sal.
We're there. So real-time insights, also important, is having accessible data for the organization on your UTMs, campaigns, payment cost recovery, all of this. We can see at a glance what's happening for our nonprofits. Now, I wanted to share
on the data on the YouTube, I won't this insights because we love this with our clients.
Okay, cool.
I think again, as some of the restrictions around Google and cookie consent become perhaps tighter, we lean more and more into this tab for our clients, and especially now that you've added the UTM tracking, which is awesome.
Awesome. Yeah.
That it allows us to be able to make more strategic decisions about investments. You know, where are we getting the best return on our ad spend, all that kind of stuff from this. So there's some, not only is it great for the donor, but I would also say for the not-profit, there's some really wonderful strategic insights that come from this part of the platform as well.
And a lot of this data is stuff that would take hours and hours to pull together, right? From different sources. I just wanted to cover over very quickly a couple of the recent releases that have just come out or are coming out. You just mentioned one of them, New Insights Dashboard. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep adding more metrics to that dashboard, Jessica, so it'll get more useful. We just released a REST API to allow for face-to-face transactions, direct mail, to tap into the API so that all of your donors, regardless of channel, are getting the same donor portal, receipt, acknowledgement, all of that in real time, as well as syncing to your CRM in the same single manner. We've added SSO for our larger customers, so single sign-on, and then automated upgrade links are powerful, which we can talk about.
And there's a question in the chat. Sorry, where does the data come from?
The data on
Philip was talking about data as when you're talking about predicting the individual donor experience.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about like where does that data come from?
Absolutely. So Philip Reber, it's coming from essentially a little piece of code that's on the website, exactly in the same manner as Google Analytics. So everything that Google Analytics can see, Fundraise Up can. The difference is Google Analytics is giving you data, but it's also using that data to sell advertising, right? We have a piece of code on the website that's pulling in what's their IP address, what's their zip code, what's the household income of that zip code, what's their device, what's their browser language, how long have they been on the website, what's the average gift in the context of how long they're on the website, making decisions in real time like that. So that's where all the data is coming from. It's all coming from anonymous visitor profile. Okay, that makes sense? Hey, Jeanette.
That's the same data that, you know, Amazon uses, Chewy, Uber, it's all the same. They're all using that. We're leveraging the same type of data.
Correct. And this is my screen. This is legit a picture into my soul why I do this job. You know, this is why we do it. This is your new boss. When you have to deliver the news, oh, IT doesn't want another integration, or but we have to learn another new tool, right? Like the news has to be delivered to the beneficiaries of why that's not happening, because we know factually, empirically, with data, that by doing these things, more of those kids eat, more of the elderly are served, more of the homeless are housed, more of the polar bears are saved. That's for you, Jeanette, by the way. She's here from Polar Bears International. This is why I do what I do. This is why we all do what we do. And I think we can make it a better experience for everyone, including ourselves and those we serve. So that's it. Add me on LinkedIn. We don't have time to chat, I don't think, here, but happy to answer questions if you are doing that.
Okay, and I think, yeah, I mean, if anyone has any questions, we can also, I think at the end, we can also kind of loop back for any questions if anyone has them. Thanks so much, Sal. So now, oh, I can see Gray's come on screen here. So we'll switch over. Thank you. And lots of shout outs. There seems to be lots of Fundraise Up customers here, happy customers. So that's great. And I'm sure they would be happy to talk to anyone who's interested. Okay, Gray, over to you. Let's leverage a different part of the AI engine. So we kind of talked about the donor experience with Fundraise Up, and I know you all also partner closely with Fundraise Up. But Dataro kind of looks at the segmentation, and we always, there's an old kind of direct mail motto that it's like, doesn't matter how good the creative is or how fantastic the package looks, if you can't get it to the right people at the right time, that's the kind of the big key here. So excited to talk to you and how you all do that for your clients at Dataro.
100%. I think a lot of it I saw in the chat too is about meeting people where they're at. We talked about that a bit in some of Philip's presentation earlier, like maybe some people are most engaged on TikTok, maybe some people are most engaged in direct mail, but it's all about like finding what is the best way to reach each individual donor. So I'll share my screen here and we can start talking a bit about some of the work we do at Dataro. Jess, feel free to jump into with kind of questions as we go, and keep me honest on the chat. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Are folks seeing the slide deck right now?
I'm not seeing it yet.
Let's try it again.
No, I can also pull it up. Oh, yes. And in the chat, Alex from Dataro is also here. So she's in the chat. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to her. So she put her info in the chat as well. And let me know. I can also hop in and share if you want me to, Gray.
We're good. I think I just had to take it out of full screen. Are folks seeing this okay now?
Yep.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. For any folks who weren't here when I introduced myself earlier, my name's Gray, like the color. I'm based in Ithaca, New York. Former canvasser. If there are any former canvassers out there, drop it in the chat. I got to canvas for about a year for Oxfam in New York City, and it was an amazing experience. Honestly, I think it's something that every person should do if they can, because it's a great way to talk with donors in person. And to be honest, if anyone knew me when I was 16, no one would have ever been like, oh, Gray would make a great canvasser, because I could barely talk to anyone at the time. But canvassing is a great way to really build your extroversion skills. Just to give folks a bit of a story on how we got started before we get into some of the meat and potatoes of predictive AI, which is what we'll be talking about here. Tim, who's our co-founder and CEO, is a big data science nerd, studied neuroscience in college, and was working for banks for a time doing data science, and loved the work of data science, hated the work of working for banks, found it to be kind of soul crushing in a lot of ways. So he wanted to continue that work, but for a cause that he believed in. And that led to a project with a big conservation org that's international, that has tens of thousands of monthly donors. And they wanted to see if they could use predictive modeling to identify people who were at risk of canceling their monthly donation so they could intervene in some way. So they did this project with Tim, and over a 9-month period, they were able to retain an additional 531 monthly donors. And everyone was like, this is awesome. Where else can we be using predictive modeling? And that was really how we got started. Just a quick distinction here between predictive and generative AI. Some of the examples Philip showed earlier, where we had the audio samples, the video samples, which honestly, it's mind blowing what AI can create these days. That would be more in the generative AI camp. Predictive AI is more about looking at patterns and data and figuring out, in the case of donors, like what is the best next action we should be taking with them? Or in the case of Fundraise Up, right, what is the amount that we should be encouraging them to donate? Should we be asking them for a monthly gift? Because what we're seeing in the data predicts that they're likely to give a monthly gift. And I pulled this slide from one of our old presentations. We used to say AI has the potential to transform fundraising. It's already doing it. That's old news now. AI is already radically transforming fundraising. I was talking with an org the other day who started using Fundraise Up like 6 months ago, and they immediately saw an uptick in people converting to monthly giving. So it's something people are already using in the day-to-day. And just to back up a bit and talk about some of the challenges we've heard from fundraisers. These are all real quotes from people that we've talked with at events. The bottom left one. Yeah, exactly. That's my favorite one. But a lot of it is around this theme of like, we are data rich and analysis poor, right? Like we have mountains of data in our CRMs. Folks have more data than they've ever had in the past, but only a tiny fraction of that gets used, right? A lot of times if we're doing a direct mail campaign or something like that, we might look at recency, frequency, value, which are great indicators. They're just not everything that's available for us to look at patterns and figure out what's the best next action for someone.
Hey, Greg, can you X out of that little thing that says you do not have permission?
Oh, yes.
Blocking some of the text. Yeah, perfect. Cool.
There you go. Thank you. Even when we zoom into something like recency, right? A lot of times we're kind of forced to put people in these big buckets where it's like, we'll mail to everyone who gave in the past 12 months. But there's a big difference between someone who gave, 3 days ago versus 364 days ago, right? But a lot of times we're kind of forced to treat everyone the same way. And what that leads to, you can kind of imagine as like casting a net over a fraction of your database. And we end up missing a lot of people who are outside of that net that actually are likely to give. Similarly, we might be including people who are actually not likely to give. And so we're spending time or resources on engaging them, even though the data shows that they're not likely. Another way to think about this, I don't know if anyone does any jigsaw puzzles out there, but you know that moment where you like first dump the jigsaw puzzle onto the table and there's just kind of like pieces everywhere and you're like, oh man, this is maybe a bit off more than I could chew here. I think that's how a lot of folks feel about their CRMs, right? Where it's just like there's all this data and you know that there are patterns in there that are useful, but it's hard to think about how should I go about finding those. That's what machine learning is great at, right? It's about finding the patterns in there so that you can go from this amorphous jigsaw puzzle to a unified view of each donor in your database. So you can be more personalized to them and do personalized outreach to them. Were you going to say something, Jess?
Yeah, well, and I think as well, like donors, like what we talked about with Sal, it's this expectation, right? For like for profit, they look at you kind of as an individual. What is the right experience for me, Jess, versus you, Gray, versus Sal, versus Carolina? It's going to be completely different. And as we move to be more integrated, multi-channel, our practices have to follow suit. So when you're talking about that jigsaw puzzle, 25, 30 years ago, there might have just been 3 pieces. Well, now it's like 300 pieces because it's just becoming more and more fractioned. And as an organization, it can be, as you said, so overwhelming to say like, okay, I've got my direct mail donors, then I got digital donors, then I got people who follow me on follow us on social media, then we had advocates. Like there's so many pieces, but they all do, like this screen shows, kind of how does that all come together?
Yeah, exactly. And it used to be that we had no choice but to kind of cast those wide nets, right? Because no one had time to, or money to hire like a dedicated data science engineer, or even you go back 10 years ago and there just wasn't the data to do that. But now we can know, for a certain donor, are they most likely to engage on text? Are they most likely to engage on email? What is the best channel we should reach out to them? What is the specific amount we should be asking for? Are they more likely to become a monthly donor, or are they actually likely to become a major donor? There's an org we were working with in Canada the other day, and the models aren't wealth screening, right? They're looking at the patterns in your database and predicting propensity to give to you. But we identified this one major donor that had previously been ignored before, just wasn't someone the team had flagged. And the models were like, this person is actually really likely to give. And that person turned out to be one of the wealthiest people in Canada. The models didn't know that, right? They were just looking at the patterns of that person's behavior and saying this person is really good major donor candidate. And this slide, I should have gone here, some of what you're saying. Each person's journey is unique, right? And what this predictive modeling is about is figuring out like what is the best next step for each person, because everyone, there was a great stat I heard at a conference a while ago that was, it was like around 70% of people's major donors started off giving a mass market gift of, let's say, like 500 or less. But there's that big amorphous time between that first gift of $50 to their 10th gift of $50,000. And it's all about figuring out like what is just the next best action for them as we steward them along their journey. One thing too, this is just a specific example from Maison. The thing that excited me most about this one is they were along the lines of what we've been saying, able to take a more personalized approach and ultimately almost treat every donor as the way they would a major donor using the data and predictions from Dataro. And because of that, they were able to increase their appeal revenue by 23%. And I think that goes back to the expectations thing that you and Sal were talking about. People from all of our other experiences expect a more tailored, personalized approach. That's what this new world with AI allows us to be able to do. I'll wrap up here with just kind of like an example of some of the questions that predictive AI can answer. who's going to give to my next appeal, who's ready to become a mid-level donor. I talked about that example before, not just who's likely to convert to recurring, but maybe who's at risk of canceling or who's likely to upgrade. So we can always know what that best next action is. And for folks, I'll leave this up on the screen for a second here. If anyone wants to play a little game of beat the machine, you can scan that QR code and see if you can beat the machine in a direct mail campaign.
Hey, Greg, do you mind going back to that slide where,
Yeah.
So can you just for a minute, for those who might not be familiar, if you can get back there, as familiar
Yes,
with Dataro, can you give like a tiny bit of like, how does it work? So I know
Sure.
you all explained this to me, but just for folks who might not be as familiar, how does it work? And then let's just kind of take a minute. I'd love to kind of just also talk about what else the predictive AI can do. Can you just give a little bit of an overview?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the shortest way to think about it is that pattern analysis, right? That's what the models are doing, is they're looking at the patterns in your database and figuring out what is the next step in this pattern, essentially. What's happening in a bit more detail is it'll take an event, say someone becomes a monthly donor, right? And it'll look at every single time that event has occurred in your database, and then it'll look at every single data point that preceded that in order to predict what's going to happen going forward. What the models will do too is they'll take a segment of time, and this is why it's important to have like some history, some volume of data here. But say we look at a 5-year period, right? It'll break that up into 2 different chunks, and it'll look at the, let's say, 3 to 5 year period, analyze all that data, make predictions, and then it'll test its predictions against the 1 to 3 year data set, essentially to validate its accuracy. And the models are something that we're always improving over time. We update them every 6 to 8 months or so. One other nuance that's important there is we work with around 250 orgs across the world. There's a ton of data that we've analyzed and predicted on. That allows us to continually improve the models over time. So it's not just looking at the patterns in your database, it's also learning from the collective wisdom of like every org we've partnered with to see those like more universal patterns.
So the tool kind of plugs into your CRM, then gets to, looks at your data, figures out what's models using the AI tool, and then kind of spits out for whatever appeal. So if you're, for example, let me just say, if you're doing, for example, let's say we're doing a direct mail appeal, it's our annual renewal. The tool can predict, okay, you can mail less and gain more net because you've taken down your cost, or if you're mailing less, and you'll still bring in the same or higher revenue. You could also look at, okay, we're trying to do a monthly conversion ask, one-time gift donor monthly. Who are the right people, right? Like, is that kind of some of the examples of how people use it?
Yeah, exactly that. And like on direct mail, like you said, a lot of times folks are using us to improve their ROI by being more precise in who we're targeting, right? And focusing on those people who are most likely to give. So a lot of times you can actually, like you said, shrink down your total mail list overall, but improve the return by focusing on the people who are most likely to give.
And then I just find all of this like segmentation stuff so interesting. And then we're also talking about, so right now, all of these are really kind of around giving. Is there any coming in terms of, how do we move non-financial donors? For example, someone who subscribes to your email list or has signed a petition, or, some of those, how do we look at, are there things coming where this is the right person to ask for a donation now? Like,
it's a great question. I don't know if I'm supposed to be showing this yet, Alex. You can yell at me if I'm not. But one of the things that's on the horizon is looking at email data, right, and analyzing people who maybe haven't given a gift yet, but seeing kind of two key things, right? We're analyzing all of your subscriber data and saying who is the most likely to become a donor, right? But also, what are they most interested in? And that goes back to the personalization point, where we can see, based on everything you sent them, maybe you're a conservation org, and we see that this person, they're actually interested in a very specific animal. Let's say like they're very passionate about protecting elephants and ensuring elephants have a protected environment, right? We can identify that and say, this is like what you should be focused on for this particular donor, and identifying those key interest areas so we can focus on people. Or on the flip side of that, maybe see that someone is only educated in this one segment, and we want to make sure that they're educated holistically on what we do, so we can make sure they're not focused in on one specific area.
And so we can do that for donors as well, right? Like if someone, for example, is very into research, and we can kind of, Dataro can help say, this is the type of person we should be talking, or use this type of topic to engage with this donor.
Yeah, exactly that. One thing that's important too, I think there's a webinar upcoming that y'all are hosting that's focused on breaking down silos. We've talked with a lot of orgs who they have like their email engagement tool, like MailChimp, let's say, and then they have their CRM. And a lot of times they're not talking to each other, right? With Dataro, you can integrate both of your systems, so then you can have that unified view of the donor that previously was impossible, to help break down some of those data silos.
Yep. And Alex just put in the chat here as well. I mean, this is another thing that I was going to ask about, but it's like churn, like who's most likely, who's at risk at churning, who's at risk lapsing, so that we can get on a proactive level as opposed to constantly being reactive, which is majority of the charities we work with. It's reactive. It's like, okay, they've canceled. Now, how do we try to win them back? What's our win back strategy? But if we can be on the forefront of that and say, you know, for your donor base, you will see that typically people churn at this point, or this person's at risk. We can do that kind of stewardship before they even churn.
100%. Yeah, a lot of it is about maximizing that lifetime value of the donor, right? People will spend so much money to acquire someone, especially if you're doing something expensive like canvassing. You know, it can be like $350 just to acquire a donor. What we're here to do is help maximize that person's lifetime value and steward them along that journey. So like you said, you can be more proactive and figure out, you know, who's maybe at risk that I should call this week, and not ask them for anything, but maybe just call them to thank them and let them know something we did recently that had an impact. And that, I think, is one of the things that excites me most about AI. Part of it is the time-saving aspect, right? Like I've worked with orgs where they've spent 3 weeks trying to figure out who to mail to, right? That should be something where it's like, you know, 1 minute, you know, give me a list of the 5,000 people I should mail to. But the other part is freeing up some of our time to focus on the relationships, because I think most fundraisers, like, that's why we're in this, right? It's about the relationships, and these tools allow you to save time and know what to focus on to help with nurturing those relationships over time.
And this is a tool. Are you seeing clients from kind of all parts of the organization using this tool? You talked about mid and legacy and major.
Yeah.
And this is a tool, I think, that kind of transcends all kind of the, you know, different kind of buckets or departments in organizations.
Yeah, 100%. Direct mail teams, membership teams, major gift teams for building out portfolios. It is something that's across the org. You can also come in here and visualize some of your data. Like if you want to see your retention curves over time and how you're retaining those monthly donors, you can come in and visualize some of that data in Dataro to, again, be more proactive, right? There's some benchmarking too, so you can come in and not just see your own retention curves, but maybe see how your retention curves on recurring donors compare to other orgs in Canada or other orgs of a similar size. Alex has talked with a ton of orgs who they come in thinking maybe they had this one particular problem, like they wanted to focus on growing major giving, but they come in and they look at the benchmarking and they're actually like really strong on major giving. But we see from the benchmarking that mid-level is an area where they're a bit lacking on. So you can also use that to inform your strategy of where am I really lacking and where should I be focusing on growing in the years ahead.
Yep. Okay, I think we're conclude it. Thank you, Greg. I will say, Dataro, I love data, so I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you're not following them in terms of their email list, they put out some, because they have so much data, they put out some really great insights in terms of what they're seeing across all their clients. And like Greg said, you know, it's across the world. So they put out some really great benchmarks. I know Mike Slaughter put out a report on retention. So some really great stuff. So if you're not subscribing to them, I highly recommend you do, because I love getting those kind of annual reports to say, like you said, Greg, like, where are we in here, and see what the trends in the marketplace are doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, Philip, I think we're kicking it back over to you.
You're kicking it back to me. Thank you, Gray. That was great. And thank you, Sal, ahead of Gray. I hope you all are enjoying it. Listen, you're hanging in there. If you're still here, woo, way to go. This is like a telethon or something. It's like, okay, let me share my screen here. Share. Okay, let me go to slideshow mode. And Jess or Brian or anybody, does that look okay? Can you see my screen?
That looks great. Sorry. Yes.
Good. Okay, so I nudged
Yeah,
the
looks
timing
good.
a little bit. I'm going to start with the Megatrend summary here, 11:55 Eastern time. And then I'll go until about 12:15. Eugene, Sabrina, others, as you're getting ready. I'll probably hand this over to you at about 12:15. Then you've got an hour of Eugene and team and Lolita. They're going to get a little more technical. They're going to dive into some topics that we haven't touched on: peer-to-peer, TeamRaiser, Blackbaud, Shopify, etc. And then at 1:15, Jess and Carolina and everybody else is going to host conclusions and questions. This is really your time. We can get into some issues. We can get into some questions in a little more depth. And then we'll probably end this around 1:45 Eastern time. And I just want to thank everybody for staying with us. I'm glad you're finding it interesting because we think about this stuff all the time. So it's kind of nice to share it. Okay, let's do in summary with the megatrends. Okay, so let me do one thing before I start this. Sal gave me a good idea. In the chat, let's see, where's my chat? Oh, let me stop share for a second. To everyone, here's my LinkedIn. I like Sal's idea. Just hit me up on LinkedIn and then we can continue the conversation. I thought that was a great idea. Let me share my desktop. Boom, boom, boom. Back to the slideshow. I would love to connect on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn. Megatrend. Okay, you've seen all these cool tools. You've seen Fundraise Up. You've seen Dataro. You've seen some of the AI fun I was having. Brian gave us kind of the balance. Hey, listen, this is great stuff, but we got to maintain authenticity. At the end of the day, part of what I'm excited about is this idea of mass personalization. You know, I remember back, I don't know when it was, I'll date myself. I was the VP of e-business for United Way of Greater Toronto in 1999. And that's when the internet was kind of new, you know, and we had sent, Ann Golden was the CEO and president of United Way Greater Toronto at the time. And we had sent an email out to everybody we had email addresses for. And we personalized it and we signed it from Ann. Dear Philip, thank you so much for your gift, blah, 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 from Ann Golden. And the next day, she told me how many people had called her and said, Ann, I can't believe that you're taking time out of your busy day to send me an email. Like they really felt that she had sent those emails. So I always kept that in mind. You know, it's like, we shouldn't take this stuff for granted. Personalization is very important. Let's dive into this just for a second. I didn't have time to show this video earlier, so hopefully it'll work this time. And hopefully you're not sick of AI yet. I mean, you can tell we're very excited about AI now in its appropriate use.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is...
What does this remind you of? Schrodinger's cat.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
When all of these tools come together, it's a powerful combination.
It's amazing.
That's amazing.
It's an entire suite of different kind of possibilities.
Hi, I'm Gemini. What neighborhood do you think I'm in? This appears to be the King's Cross area of London.
Together, we're creating a new era.
And back to Jess's point, yes, I'm an Android guy. I mean, and I will challenge the average gift assumption made earlier in the presentation. But for those of you who use Google, I mean, why am I an Android guy? Because I love Google so much. Now, why do I love Google? Because I love Gmail so much. Well, why do I love Gmail? Because I can search for anything that I've ever said in Gmail like that. And then I fell in love with Google Photos. And now in Google Photos, I can say, show me pictures when I've been swimming. with my voice, and it'll interpret that and pull it. It's just, I find some of Google's interface is so unbelievable that iPhone always messed me around when I was trying to be heavy Google with my email and my calendar. I was like, I left iPhone and I went to Android and I've never looked back since. That's why, because it's just easier to use for me, okay? As we think about personalization for you, where do I care about Google? I care about Gmail. And I brought this up at the beginning, which is, boy, a lot of your email addresses are Gmail addresses. I don't know if you've studied your email yet, but study it a little bit and see what portion of your email audience is on Gmail. And then if you realize it's a large number, you're going to have to be very careful that you don't get demoted from the important tab to other or promotions, because Gmail has got this big AI engine running, watching how I interact with email. And if I don't interact with your email for a couple of shots, it's going to start deprioritizing that for me, right? It's protecting me. So we have to think about email very carefully. For example, in the first email of a series, let's say I become a donor. Are you asking me to interact with you in a way that will show Gmail that I care? Are you asking me to reply? Are you asking me to click? Are you asking me to validate? What are you asking me to do in that very first email of the email series that will teach Gmail that your from field is important to me? So I'll just lay that one out there. Let's get into the tools a little bit more. And then Jess, I don't know if you're still on or not, but I'm going to show your favorite slide in just a second. This is a picture of my Amazon. So when I log into Amazon, this is what I saw last night when I logged in. If you log into Amazon, it's going to look very different for you, right? So that homepage is very different for me than it is for you, than it is for Jess, than it is for Brian, okay? Because Amazon is saying, Philip, I know you. I kind of know what you like to watch. I do like watching these crime dramas and whatever. So they're trying to push me on this on-call series they've got. I do like to think about building an aquarium for the boys. You know, it's showing me the way I interact with it. But what I'm finding is when I go to most of your home pages, it's the same homepage for everybody, okay? So as everybody logs into your homepage, with some exceptions, it's the same homepage for the entire audience. Now, why is that? Why is it different for Amazon, but the same for most organizations? It's because, and this is Jess's favorite slide, and Jess, if you're still on, you're welcome to talk about it. Oh, good. Jess, why don't you talk about this slide for a second?
Yeah, so this is something where we've taken kind of what Philip just showed from an Amazon experience and said, what does that look like for a not-for-profit? You know, and obviously there's different data sources, which is what's sitting right there on the left-hand side identity. So, you know, there's the CRM, there's, like Gray said, you have a MailChimp. So your email data lives over in MailChimp. There's whatever's coming over from Google. There's all these different kind of data entities, but it all flows into what your donor profile would be. And then the segmentation, there's lots of different facets to your segmentation. So the example I love to give is if Sarah Rose goes to your website and, you know, suddenly they know that she's an active one-time gift donor. Well, maybe her language, her donation, to Sal's point, is going to default to monthly because we already know she's an active one-time gift. We know that she has an interest in research. So that means for her, the homepage, the banner might be much more focused on research as opposed to services. So it's being able to offer the experience. And again, we keep saying it, meeting where the donor, where they are, because your donor is also a consumer, and the consumer is being met where they are when it comes for profit.
So to Jess's point, we see you starting to adopt some of the tools Amazon is using. Now, you'll call them customer data platforms or donor experience systems, okay? So there's lots of new, what I will call content systems that you can use that will modify the homepage content. And part of what we're helping our clients do is imagine, how would we use those? So if we could vary the content on the homepage based on some data that you've got in your CRM, what would it be? And we find those kind of challenges so interesting because it's a technical challenge, but it's also a creative challenge. And we're
And I will,
yeah,
sorry. And I will just say one more thing. And that's why, you know, we're so thankful to our partners like Fundraise Up and Dataro, because I think those are two platforms. I mean, how many times have we had the CRM discussion, right? And I know all these organizations like, oh, we have this CRM. Do we need to now switch CRM? And it's an enormous task. So, but what's exciting about technologies like Fundraise Up and Dataro are those you can do that and they can integrate with your current CRM. So you can start to kind of dip your toe in this CDP, totally personalized experience without having to totally abandon your CRM and move, which is an enormous lift. So you can kind of test, hey, we were able to use Fundraise Up and show that when we, have a more personalized experience, we're able to increase the revenue, the conversion rate by 30%. Okay, well, that helps to build a case for perhaps a CRM discussion down the road. So, I don't think it's all or nothing. There's now partners and tools in place where you can kind of start to dip your toe into this territory. Sorry to interrupt.
No, please do. Okay, let me try to round it out for this part of the morning, which is from CRM to RFM. Okay, this is kind of, Jess set it up a little bit. I heard Gray talk about it a little bit. Sal talked about it a little bit. Who knows who this is and what movie it comes from? Please type it in the chat and somebody holler out who's first. Either actor, ideally movie.
Okay, Adam Stewart, Minority Report.
Okay, Adam Stewart. Do you remember the plot line of Minority Report? That is the correct answer. What was the premise of Minority Report? Adam Stewart. Let's give him a second to type.
Predict crime.
Okay, so you remember Tom Cruise was this cop living in the future, and there were these cogs, they called them, these women who floated in this goo, who were able to see into the future. And if they agreed, the three of them agreed, then the little ball would roll out of the machine, and then Tom would get it and go stop the crime before it occurred. So my setup here is you got precogs. He was responsible for pre-crime. So obviously, what is my question to you? Where are your pre-donors? And how do we know they're pre-donors? So in the same way, we're not gonna use precogs. We're gonna use your data. We're gonna use the data in Google Analytics 4 that Sal and team are using with Fundraise Up to modify those giving ask arrays based on time of day and Android versus iPhone, postal code, whatever. How do we use the data that's already in your systems to predict the pre-donor? Because that's where I'm particularly interested, is in this question of acquisition. How do we acquire new relationships using all of these digital tools? The models in the past have all been built on some version of recency, frequency, and monetary value. That's the base algorithm that is used in most prediction engines. It's saying, how recent was Philip's last gift? How frequently does he give? And how much money does he give? And I'm going to suggest to you that that's a perfectly good algorithm to use, but you're looking backwards, okay? So it's like driving your car, looking in your rear view mirror. We're looking back at past data. It's not going to help me identify that pre-donor. I think the new systems and the new sets of data are going to help us predict these pre-donors. In the past, the donor database was at the center of the universe, okay? The center of your data universe was, somebody would call it a CRM or a donor database. And I think this model is starting to break down because data is now everywhere and it's not going to fit inside your database. There's no way you're going to get all the data you need into your database to do your work. I think this is going to challenge a lot of the way people have used technology. I think it's exciting because we have new tools, we have new ways to act, I would say, more like a commercial organization than ever before. And I'm not saying that in a good way necessarily. I'm saying that they are so sophisticated with their checkout, with their homepage, with the way they treat me in email and text and WhatsApp and all sorts of things, that I think the tools are now becoming less expensive so that the not-for-profit sector can start adapting them. I would suggest that the future's now, and then a person on our team who you didn't get to meet is John Rocca, and he
once said, the medium is the message. Now, 60 years later, the medium of AI avatars enables communication that is visual, interactive, and potentially more emotionally engaging than traditional forms of marketing. The challenge I pose to you is this. As fundraisers, how do you embrace AI and still create authentic connections with your donors?
I'm with Sharon.
Creepy, right? Did Sharon say creepy?
Yeah, she did.
Okay, now, to Brian's point. So you know what John did is he found an audio of Marshall McLuhan in an image and told the system to animate it. You see what I'm saying? It's like you can revive people now if you have an image of them and if you have their voice. The voice can then be recorded and you do a voice avatar, you do a video avatar, and there you go. So imagine where we could go though with personalization that is not creepy. I think the goal is to be personalized at mass scale and not be at all creepy. And I think that's the challenge. That's why we can't just turn it over to the machines. And so I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for staying with us so far. Eugene, get ready because I'm going to turn it over to you in just a second. We do have another webinar. Take a picture of this page. Eugene's going to remind you of it at the very end, but our next webinar is going to be February 27th, Integration Nation, how to break down silos in your fundraising.